so, you know, them big little things, he got shot in the belly. And so he died in Virginia. And he had a slave or a manservant with him called Sharper. And Sharper brought his body, his horse, his saddle,
His hat.
and his hat.
And his sword. Did he bring a sword?
His sword back to Sandersville. He could have gone north with it too, but anyway.
Oh.
And so that's where he's buried. And his oldest daughter married my great grandfather.
I'm going back to this stuff. All right, Dad. Bill's going to record what
I'm
you're
just
saying.
setting that beside you so I can hear what you're saying.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'll start from the beginning.
Yeah.
In Sandersville, Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
is where my great grandfather and great grandfather are buried. My great grandfather had 2 plantations of 2,000 acres each, and in the 1860 census, he had 87 slaves, and it was apparently the whole family was a Wharton. Debbie,
What's that?
Wharton.
Wooten.
There's 2 different ones. Wharton, Whorten. Wooten Worthen.
Yeah, that's the word. That's a child. Anyway, I can't remember the pronunciation. It's just north of Sandersville is a town named for the family.
Sandersville or Simmonsville?
Sanders.
Oh, see, I already put Simmonsville.
Sandersville.
Not Henry. It was William Wooten Carter.
Okay, he's right above. All right. William W. Carter Jr., son of William W. Carter and Ann Wharton. No, Dad, that said was stillborn.
Yeah.
William W. Carter, the first one was stillborn. Warthen.
Yeah.
So we had, I've got this book and I took a picture of stuff in it. Person Warthen.
Yeah.
Worthen or Wharton?
It's Ehren. So I don't know if it's pronounced Wharton or Warthen, but it's Warthen. Okay, they had a
He's the one
daughter.
who got shot. The great
Right.
shot.
Yeah. And he had a daughter named Ann Warthen.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
Ann
October.
October. I'm going back to try and find pictures to see if that'll help.
Anyway, on the plantation they lived on, it burnt. The house burnt, so they moved to the other plantation into the overseer's house, which was built in 1840. And so Debbie and I visited there, and
Oh, wow. You had to send me that picture.
Thomas Jefferson Wharton is my great grandfather, and
Thomas Jefferson.
apparently the Wharton family were into farming, but his occupation was the military. So he was a general in the Georgia Guard and a colonel in the Confederate Army. Outside of Richmond in 1862, he got shot with grape shot. And grape shot's like Sarah Rebecca.
Right.
I'm getting the 2 mixed up now. Anyway, she had a daughter named Sarah, and the daughter Sarah is my grandmother,
Okay.
and she's buried with Mom and Pop in Savannah.
Cool.
And tell me the two cemeteries again, because Mimi and Pop are at, isn't one of them called Laurel Grove?
Laurel Grove.
Little Grove and Bonaventure.
Bonaventure is the other one.
And the cup. You want the cup or the tea?
Grandmother was the oldest child of Thomas Jefferson Wharton, and the lady that still lives there is the descendant of the youngest of the sisters. And so William Wooten Carter and his wife are both buried at the same place as Thomas Jefferson Wooten. And so it was a interesting
Yeah.
discovery, I guess.
Yeah, how did y'all figure that out?
And I've got somewhere on my phone someplace, I have pictures of their graves.
Yeah, this is Thomas Jefferson Wharton's.
So your great grandmother is the daughter of Thomas Jefferson Wharton.
Yeah. And so that makes her my great grandmother. And then
What was her name?
one of her children was Henry Carter, and so Henry and Mimi and Pop were all buried at the same place.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So Dad, I've got a picture here of one of the gravestones. Hold on, this is Christopher. I've got to, he's at the airport.
Okay.
And Rivers.
Yeah.
Right, which is the daughter of this guy.
Was it Sarah Rebecca Moore? Was that her name, Uncle John?
Was it Sarah Rebecca Moore?
Sarah Rebecca Moore was my grandmother.
And didn't Kathy have a baby named that?
Sarah
Same
Rebecca.
name and didn't
Unknown,
know.
isn't that
Yeah.
crazy?
Did you know that, Uncle John?
She didn't know that.
Yeah, I know. That's what Scott told us.
Yeah.
anyway.
Okay. Yeah.
Where does he keep his glass cleaners at?
Uncle John, how
He just
about
found that, or just while we were driving down the road, he's like, look at this, and I'm like,
the flying boat?
the Batson boat,
But
the Batson flying boat.
yes,
Now tell us that story, because the way I understand it, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, Thunderbolt Marine, which is right there at the base of the bridge, the old bridge when you come across, on the left-hand side, that's Thunderbolt
out on the
Marine.
out on the point.
Yes. And that's where they built the Batson flying boat?
Yes,
And then in World War II, it was used as a shipping?
I don't know about that. My great grandfather was a master carpenter, and he was born in Breakney Hoby, Sweden, and immigrated to the U.S. around 1896. And he had children, which is my grandmother, and she and her husband came in 1898 with their oldest child, and then another child was born, and then Pop was born, and then Magnus, another brother, was born, and Margaret, a daughter, and who's Robert's mother?
I don't really know, Robert.
Anyway, they had children, and that's where we all came from there. So you got different chains coming together.
Yeah.
Now, how many brothers and sisters did Pop have?
He had 3 brothers and 2 sisters.
And Harry was his brother?
Harry,
No, Harry was
No.
Mimi's brother.
Harry's on the wrong other side.
Oh, the Carter son. What about Mimi? How many brothers and sisters did she have?
I can't get that straight in my mind. She had 2 living ones, but her mother produced some other children that may not have lived very long. Anyway, the two living children, or that grew up, was my Uncle Harry. Okay, that's down the road on the island, and Uncle Phil, who went to New York and made all kind of money, and then lost all kind of money.
What did he do in New York to make money?
Gosh, your name.
Our predecessor, descendant, I don't know, anyway, came from Germany, from a town called Nordheim, and
Lord,
Nordheim.
he was like 4 years old at the point, and they went to Philadelphia. Then they moved a little bit south in Pennsylvania, and then they appear in Tryon, North Carolina.
Let me borrow your glasses for a second.
Huh?
Let me see your glasses. I'm gonna clean them. Really dirty.
And then the Revolutionary War took place, and he had two sons, and they got captured by the British, and were told that if you don't fight for us, we're gonna kill your brother. And so they fought for the British, and after the war, they really weren't welcome back in Tryon, North Carolina. One of them relented and got dispensation from the family. Our descendant, which is Philip Goodbread, moved from there to Lake City, Florida. At that point in time, Florida was owned by Spain, and to live there, you had to become a Catholic and pledge allegiance to the King of Spain. And he says, I'm not doing that. So he moves north to St. Mary's, Georgia, which, by the way, has a bed and breakfast called Youngbrud's.
Which I have a picture of.
And so after we acquired, the U.S. acquired Florida from Spain, he moved back down to Lake City. And
so he's Philip Goodbread.
Let me show you the good bread
Yeah.
inn. Okay, this is the
uh,
good bread inn where he
wait, whoa,
lived.
whoa, whoa,
Called
whoa.
Goodbread Inn?
Philip Goodbread Moore
Uh-huh.
is my great-grandfather.
Okay.
And some people before him are in the chain, and I can't remember it.
Okay.
Anyway, he married a Sarah Rivers,
Okay.
and Sarah Rivers was is my great grandmother. Or Sarah Rivers Moore. And she had a daughter, Sarah Rebecca, who's your great grandmother, my great grandmother, and interestingly, because there were two cemeteries. One from Phil talked about the church down the road a mile or so. And that was the church's cemetery, and so in there all the graves of people. There was one with iron fence around it, and that was the Moore graveyard
And where is that at? In
in
Lake City.
Lake City,
Lake City.
and outside of Falling Creek.
I just
Was sickly, and so somebody told him about Falling Creek. The waters there were curing, so her husband sold everything and went down there. This is the lady that lived to be 102, and she had 10 children.
it should be back in those days.
Farm workers.
And that was,
Yes, Libby and Edith.
Okay, he correct me if I'm wrong about this, he produced all of the flamethrowers and fire extinguishers for the U.S. military. in
Yeah,
World
he
War
did
II.
something with bomb plants,
Oh.
And made
wow.
a ton of money and somehow lost it all. I don't know how, but.
cause he took risks
Do you
and
remember who
gambled.
Aunt Edith was?
No.
I am clueless.
Well, when we
About
were little
family,
kids in the
which is horrible.
70s, I can remember swimming in her pool in 1976.
Okay, we gotta get the flying boat story. Uncle John.
Dad, tell them about the flying boat in Savannah and its sinking.
Batson boat, we were talking about Thunderbolt Marine.
Yeah, all right, it was, you know, he came to the US and established a business there, building boats. And somehow they got hooked up with Batson. Batson financed the building of a airplane. And so Israel was a great-great-grandfather. And he built this flying boat, like a boat.
Yeah.
And it was anchored out in the water off of Wausau Island, I think. And so Batson brought some investors down to see it.
You want your drink?
Is the fact that he's getting stuff out good?
Yes.
Is that a good sign?
Mhm.
Canada. They started the engines and the things going around the anchor, and the anchor kept going and sunk.
Oh, man.
No swivel bracket.
That's the story I had heard too.
You can go on Google and put Batson in there and find out part of that story.
What year was this?
This was right at the turn of the century, same time as the Wright
Yeah.
brothers.
Yeah.
1815. I mean 1915.
Wasn't it 1905?
1950. I think it was
Israel
1915, right? I read about it.
had workers for him, one of which was black, and somebody was unhappy with him. He came there to deal with the black guy, and Israel got in the way and got killed.
Oh.
They shot him.
Uh,
Now, if y'all Google the Batson flying boat, what's really weird about the Batson flying boat is if you Google it, they even sell models of it now.
yeah.
10 years ago, I Googled it, there was nothing there. Now there's
When we got to Sweden, there was a place for an immigrants museum, and so we got to go there and we obviously can't read Swedish, and his hand scroll type Swedish, but there was a lady that from Minnesota there that helped us, so she found where the family came from, because I'd always heard that he came from Hobie. Turns out in Sweden there were two Hobies, so they had to change the name, and so it's Brickney Hobie is the town it came from. So, you know, we went down there and saw the town, toured around, etc. Then we went up to Stockholm and across to Oslo, and then came back to Copenhagen. But I still felt I had living relatives, so I got in touch with a genealogist online, and so she did some research. In 2 years later, in 1998,
Not good.
Scott?
Go.
I drug he and Carol into Sweden again, because we knew where to look this time.
Right.
And it turns out that the genealogist's next door neighbor's last name was Elmgren.
Oh, wow.
And so he arranged for us to meet with him and his children because he didn't speak English, the children do. And so about an hour into that meeting, his sister says, "Oh, our grandfather changed his name." So I deduced from that this guy was an apprentice or worked for Israel Elmgren. And when Israel left for the U.S., people kept coming to town looking for Elmgren to build things. And so he said, "I'm Elmgren." And which are 15 miles away, something like that. And it's also the largest town in that area.